The stars over Valor had not looked peaceful in many years. Fires burned across the land, and the people watched the skies with fear, not hope. Once, Valor was a rich and calm world. Now it was a battlefield. Cities had fallen, homes were turned to ash, and children grew up knowing only war. The enemy, a cruel alien warlord named Threx, had taken everything. He and his armies marched from one city to another, killing or enslaving anyone who stood in their way. Valor had no more strength to fight. Their leaders were tired, their soldiers too few, their weapons too old. In one last attempt to survive, Valor sent a signal into space. A simple message. "We need peacekeepers, please help us." They didn't expect much. The Galactic Union had ignored them before. Other planets were too afraid of Threx to get involved, but the message went out anyway, like a whisper in a storm. Weeks passed. No one replied. Then one day, the sky changed. People ran into the streets as a dark shape appeared above the clouds. It was massive, larger than any ship they had seen before. Black, sharp, and silent, it hovered above the capital like a shadow. The symbol on its side was unfamiliar, a silver claw inside a circle. It was not from the Union. It was not from any known world. It was from Earth. Valor's leaders gathered in their underground command bunker, staring at the ship through trembling hands. The name of the ship appeared on their screens, Vanguard of Earth. One of the advisors gasped, "Earth? They are from the Death World. They don't send peacekeepers, they send killers." The High Council sent a message to the Earth ship, trying to sound brave. "This is Valor. We called for peacekeepers. Please identify your purpose." For a long time there was no answer. Just static. Then, a voice replied. Calm. Deep. Cold. "We received your signal. We are here to end the conflict." "Are you peacekeepers?" the council asked. There was a pause. "No," said the voice. "We are Warborn." The people of Valor watched as smaller ships detached from the great vessel and landed near the ruined city of Dalvin. Black dropships opened and soldiers marched out. They were tall, wearing dark armor with glowing blue eyes. Their movements were quiet but heavy. Their faces were hidden behind helmets. Each step felt like thunder. These were not diplomats. Not aid workers, not soft voices. These were warriors. The Warborn did not speak to the crowd. They moved like ghosts, scanning the area, checking buildings, mapping the terrain. One young boy ran toward them, crying, holding a broken toy. A Warborn knelt down, silent, and gave him a small package of food and water before walking away. No words, just action. Some people whispered that Earth had sent monsters. Others said they were heroes. But one thing was clear. These were not peacekeepers. They had come to fight. That night, the people of Valor did not sleep. They waited to see what Earth would do. Would these strangers bring more war, or stop it? In the command bunker, the council argued. Some wanted to ask Earth to leave. Others begged them to stay. Meanwhile, high above, on the bridge of the Earth ship, Commander Rain of the Warborn stood watching the surface of the planet. His armor was scratched and worn. His eyes were tired. He had seen too many wars. But something about this planet made him pause. "They're not ready," said his second-in-command. Rain nodded. "No, but they called us, and now it's our war too." Back on the ground, an old man in Dalvin watched the Warborn from his rooftop. He had lost everything, his home, his family, his hope. But now something new stirred in his chest. Not peace, not joy, but maybe a chance. He whispered to himself, "They look like death. But maybe death is what our enemies need to fear." In the forests outside Dalvin, a scout from Threx's army saw the black-armored humans for the first time. He watched them move fast and quiet with strange machines and sharp eyes. He ran back to his warlord, shaking. "What did you see?" Threx asked. "They're not like the others. They're not Union. They're not weak." Threx laughed. "They will burn like the rest. But that night, for the first time, he dreamed of losing. Back in Dalvin, as the Warborn set up silent watch posts and fortified the ruins, a voice echoed again from the sky. "Stand by," it said. "Earth has arrived." And the people of Velor, for the first time in years, dared to believe that maybe the end was near. Not their end, but the end of their suffering. Because the Death World had answered the call, but not with Peacekeepers, with Warborn. The city of Dalvin was still in shock. People walked the streets quietly, staring at the tall, black-armored humans now patrolling their broken walls. The Warborn did not speak much. They moved with purpose, their boots heavy, their helmets always watching. Some carried strange weapons no one had seen before. Others walked with small flying drones that scanned the sky and the ground. Every movement felt practiced, controlled, dangerous. The children called them shadows, the elders called them ghosts. No one dared speak to them unless spoken to first, but the Warborn were not here to make friends. They were here to prepare. Commander Rain stood on a rooftop, scanning the ruins below with sharp eyes. His helmet was off. His face was rough and scarred, a map of old battles. He had seen planets fall. He had watched allies die, but this time felt different. Velor was small, weak, and broken. Yet the people had not given up. That made it worth saving. A soldier approached him. Her name was Vega. "Scouts returned," she said. "Enemy forces moving through the forest, likely probing for weaknesses." Rain nodded. "Let them. They'll find none." Vega looked at the crumbling wall below. "We're fortifying with local stone, not exactly earth steel." "They don't need steel," Rain said. "They need belief." In the streets, the people of Velor watched as Earth soldiers rebuilt broken barricades and reinforced weak walls. They used simple tools and old tech, nothing fancy, nothing magical. But everything they built was strong, fast, efficient. It was like watching machines with human faces. A group of young fighters from Velor's resistance approached the Warborn. They wore mismatched armor and carried old rifles. One of them, a tall man named Saran, stepped forward. "We can help," he said. "We know the land." The Warborn looked at him for a moment. Then one of them stepped closer. A soldier named Holt. He was huge, silent, and wore a long scar across his helmet. "You want to help?" Holt asked, voice cold. "Yes," Saran said, trying to sound brave. Holt threw a heavy pack at him. "Carry that. Follow orders. Stay out of our way. That's how you help." Saran caught the pack, surprised by the weight. He nodded. "Understood." Later that day, the Warborn began patrols outside the city. They walked through ash-covered fields and burnt forests. Every step was careful. Every noise meant danger. The enemy could be hiding anywhere. Suddenly movement. A sharp sound. A trap triggered. But the Warborn didn't panic. One raised a hand, and the entire squad froze. A small bomb hidden under the leaves had been activated. Without a word, a Warborn. Tech named Ayla stepped forward. In seconds, she disarmed it and marked the spot. "Too easy," she muttered. "They're testing us." That night, back at camp, Rain studied a map. Red marks showed enemy movement. They were closing in. "We have 3 days before the attack," Vega said. "Maybe less." "Good," Rain replied. Vega frowned. "You're not worried?" Rain looked at her. "We were born in war. We trained in war. We survived war. That's why they call us Warborn." In the dark corner of the camp, Saran sat with the other resistance fighters, watching the Warborn eat in silence. No laughter, no stories, just quiet planning. "They don't act like us," one fighter said. Saran nodded. "They act like they've already seen the end and they didn't fear it." Outside the city, in the forest, an enemy scout crept through the trees. He wore camo skin and moved without sound. But before he could take another step, a laser dot appeared on his forehead. Then silence. A Warborn sniper, hidden in the shadows, whispered into her comm. "Threat neutralized." By morning, Velor's people saw the changes. New defenses, new patrols, new hope. Children peeked from behind walls, staring at the giant soldiers. One girl offered a flower to a passing Warborn. He paused, took the flower, and placed it inside a small compartment on his armor. She smiled. He walked on. But deep in the forest, the enemy gathered. Threx, the warlord, stood in a clearing filled with firelight. Around him were his generals, brutal creatures from a dozen worlds. "They think Earth can save them," Threx said, laughing. "They forget. I've killed humans before." One of his lieutenants hesitated. "These are not normal humans, my lord. These are the Warborn." Threx slammed his fist onto the table, cracking the stone. "They bleed like anyone else." He pointed at the map. "Tomorrow night we strike." Back in Dalvin, Rain stood on the wall, staring into the distance. He could feel it. The enemy was coming. He turned to Vega. "They'll come for us tonight." She raised an eyebrow. "How do you know?" He looked back at the trees. "Because I would." The night fell, the wind howled, and the Warborn waited, still silent, ready, not for peace but for war. Night fell like a black curtain over Velor. The stars above were quiet, but the land below was tense. Everyone in Dalvin knew the enemy would come. They could feel it in the cold wind, in the way the animals had gone silent, in the way the Warborn stood still like statues, waiting. Inside the city, people locked their doors and held their children close. Some prayed. Others held weapons, hands shaking. But the Warborn did not shake. They moved through the streets with slow purpose, checking every corner, every wall. Their eyes glowed blue in the dark. Commander Rain stood on the city wall, helmet in hand. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Positions?" he asked. Vega replied through the comms. "Snipers ready, mines armed, drones in the air." "Good," Rain said. "Let them come." Far beyond the tree line, deep in the forest, the enemy army was already moving. Hundreds of soldiers marched quietly, following the orders of Warlord Threx. He led, from the front, riding a large beast with red eyes and metal claws. "This is the moment," Threx growled. "Kill the Warborn first. Make the humans bleed. Break their spirits." His generals nodded. The enemy came fast. Back in Dalvin, a Warborn sniper named Quinn watched through her scope. Her rifle rested steady on the edge of a broken building, saw shadows moving between trees. Then she whispered, "They're here." A single red flare shot into the sky. The battle began. Enemy troops poured out of the forest, charging across the fields. They roared as they ran, thinking the humans would be caught off guard. They were wrong. Before the first wave reached the wall, hidden turrets opened fire. Bright beams of light sliced through the darkness. Drones dropped small explosive charges from above. Landmines exploded one after another, sending fire into the night. The enemy screamed. Still, they kept coming. The Warborn moved fast, each soldier taking a position with perfect timing. There was no panic, no shouting, just calm. Practiced defense. Saran and the other Velor fighters stood behind the Warborn, ready to help. Saran asked, "Do we shoot now?" Warborn soldier Holt replied. "Wait," Saran frowned. "They're getting close." "Closer," Holt said. The enemy climbed the outer wall. Then Holt spoke one word. "Now." Velor's fighters opened fire. Bullets and laser shots filled the air. The enemy met resistance they had not expected. One of them reached the wall and raised a blade, but a Warborn dropped from the top like a shadow and took him down in seconds. Inside the command center, Vega watched the battle on screens. "They're testing every side," she said. "They'll find every side deadly," Rain replied. Then the enemy changed tactics. A group of large armored beasts charged through the east gate, smashing through barriers. "They're breaking through!" someone shouted. Rain grabbed his weapon. "Not yet, they aren't." He ran through the city streets, reached the breach, and found a dozen enemies storming in. He moved like a machine, calm, fast, deadly. His blade hummed with energy as he cut down 1, 2, 3 attackers in seconds. Velor fighters followed him, inspired. "Hold the gate," Saran yelled. A young Velor fighter fell. A Warborn lifted him up with one hand, threw a shield around them both, and dragged him to safety. The enemy kept coming, but the Warborn did not fall. Hours passed. The sky began to lighten with the first touch of dawn. The enemy attack had slowed. Their bodies covered the fields. Their fires burned low. At last, silence. Commander Rain stood on the battlefield, breathing heavy. Blood marked his armor. His eyes searched the ruins, but there were no more enemies left standing. Vega walked up beside him. They retreated. They lost, Rain said. They'll be back. In the city, the people of Velor came out from their hiding places. They looked around at the broken streets, the enemy bodies, and the Warborn still standing. A child pointed at Rain and whispered. They didn't run. The old man who had once lost hope stood on his rooftop again. He watched the humans below and nodded to himself. They are not like us, he said. But they came when we called. In the forest, Threx smashed a tree with his weapon. They were ready, he shouted. How? His general said. The Warborn. They knew we would come. Threx's eyes narrowed. Then next time, we come stronger. Back in Dalvin, the Warborn were already rebuilding defenses, treating the wounded, and preparing for the next fight. There was no celebration, no rest. Rain looked to the sky. They will come again, he said. Vega replied. And will be ready, because peace had not come to Velor yet, but war had, and the Warborn were not done. Smoke still rose from the fields outside Dalvin. The sky was gray, the air heavy with the smell of burnt metal and blood. People moved quietly through the city, helping clean the ruins, bury the dead, and care for the wounded. They had survived the night, but everyone knew this was not the end. The Warborn had saved the city, but the enemy was still out there gathering, waiting. Commander Rain stood at the center of a new command post. His armor was damaged, but he didn't rest. Maps and reports were spread in front of him. Drones flew in and out, delivering new data. They'll hit us again, Vega said, standing beside him. Rain nodded. Next time, harder. They tested us. Now they'll come with everything. They outnumber us, she added. Doesn't matter, Rain said. They're not fighting numbers, they're fighting us. Outside, Saran and the resistance fighters were training with a Warborn unit. Holt, the large silent soldier, barked short commands. The Velor fighters followed, sweating, struggling to keep up. Again, Holt shouted. Saran dropped to the ground, exhausted. We're not machines, he said, breathing hard. No, Holt replied. But you want to live, one young fighter asked. Why do you fight like this? No fear, no rest? Holt paused. Then he said simply, because we come from a place where fear kills faster than bullets. Later that day, a strange signal was picked up by Warborn comms. A single coded message repeating in a low, slow pattern. Vega listened to the signal. It's not from the enemy, it's coming from underground. Rain raised an eyebrow. Survivors? Or something else? Vega said. Rain made the call. We go check it, quietly. A small team of Warborn, along with Saran and 2 resistance scouts, left the city. They moved through the ruins and forests until they reached the edge of a collapsed mining site. This is where the signal came from, Vega said. They moved down into the pit, weapons ready. The deeper they went, the darker it got. Strange symbols covered the walls. Dust and silence filled the tunnels. Suddenly, a voice. Stop, it said from the shadows. Lights clicked on. A group of ragged people stood in a hidden chamber. Survivors. Scientists, engineers, children, and old soldiers. One of the engineers stepped forward. We thought no one would ever come, he said. Saran asked, why didn't you answer the emergency calls? We had no power. Barely stayed alive. Vega scanned the area. You sent the signal? The engineer nodded. We found something. Something buried. Rain stepped closer. Show me. The group led them to a sealed chamber. Inside was an old weapon. Alien technology. Large and glowing with faint red energy. Strange symbols pulsed along its surface. "We think it's Threx's tech," the engineer said. "But old, left behind, maybe too dangerous." Rain looked at it carefully. "Could it help us?" The engineer hesitated. "It might. Or it might kill us all." Rain turned to Vega. "We bring it back." Saran's eyes widened. "What if it's a trap?" Rain looked at him. "Then we'll spring it first." They returned to Dalvin with the weapon hidden under heavy shielding. The Warborn placed it in a locked bunker. Their tech experts began studying it. Threx, far away in his war camp, heard of the recovery. One of his spies reported the news. "They found it," the spy said. "The old weapon." Threx stood slowly. His eyes glowed with rage. "They don't know what they hold." He turned to his army. "Prepare the next attack. We burn the city. We take back what's ours." Back in Dalvin, Rain met with the city council. The leaders of Valor looked nervous. "We can't keep fighting forever," one of them said. "We need a truce." "There is no truce," Rain said calmly. "Only victory, or extinction." "But our people are tired," another said. "So are mine," Rain replied. "But tired men can still fight. Tired soldiers can still win. The only ones who can't are the dead." Later that night, the old man on the rooftop watched the Warborn finish their patrols. He lit a small candle and placed it on the wall, beside him. "They keep standing," he whispered, "even when the world wants them to fall." In the Warborn bunker, the alien weapon hummed softly. Ayla, the tech expert, stared at the symbols. "It's not just a bomb," she whispered. "It's a message." She turned to Rain. "They left it here for a reason." Rain looked at the glowing core. "Then it's time we listen." Outside the city, enemy scouts crept closer again. But this time they stopped when they saw what stood on the walls. Not just humans, not just resistance fighters, but something more. Something ready, the Warborn, and something deep below, beginning to wake. A strange sound filled the Warborn bunker, a deep, slow hum like the heartbeat of something ancient. The alien device glowed brighter now. Its red light pulsed in a steady rhythm. The Warborn scientists watched it closely, their faces serious. Ayla stood in front of the screen reading the alien symbols. Her hands moved across the controls with care. "It's not a weapon," she said quietly. Rain leaned closer. "Then what is it?" "It's a warning," Ayla replied. "And a countdown." That word, countdown, hung in the air like poison. Vega stepped forward. "Countdown to what?" Ayla's voice dropped. "Something big. Maybe a signal. Maybe an arrival." In the city above, the people of Dalvin went about their day, unaware that something buried beneath their feet was waking up. On the outer wall, Saran and Holt stood watch. They had grown used to each other, not friends, but no longer strangers. Saran pointed at the forest line. "They're quiet today. Too quiet." Holt nodded. "Means they're planning something." "I thought we already beat them," Saran said. Holt replied, "You only beat something when it stops coming." Later, Rain called a meeting. The leaders of Velor sat at a long table. The Warborn stood behind them like statues. Rain spoke plainly. "That device we found? It's alien, old, and dangerous. We believe Threx was trying to recover it. Now that we have it, he'll come with everything he has." One council member asked, "Then why not destroy it?" Ayla answered. "Because it's more than a weapon. It carries information, history, a warning from a lost race. And if we destroy it, we might lose our only chance to understand what's really coming." Another leader stood. "You mean Threx isn't the worst of it?" Rain's eyes were cold. "I mean something made Threx afraid enough to search for this thing. Something worse may be out there." Silence followed. Finally, the oldest council member spoke. "Then we fight. With the Warborn. Together." That night the stars above Valor shimmered with unusual colors. Strange clouds passed overhead. Static filled the comms. Drones lost signal for a few seconds at a time. It was like the sky itself was changing. In the Warborn base, the alien device spoke again, this time in words. A soft artificial voice echoed from the core. Arrival. Incoming. Time. Short. Prepare. Resistance. The room fell silent. Saran, who had entered with Holt, asked, "Arrival of what?" No one answered. The next morning, a scout returned from the forest. He was covered in blood and dirt, barely breathing. "They're coming," he said. "Thousands of them. Threx brings his full army. They march now." Rain ordered the city into full lockdown. Defenses were reinforced. Fighters were armed. Children were taken to shelters deep underground. But it was not just another battle they prepared for. It was war. From the outer towers, the first signs of the enemy were seen. Giant war beasts, hover tanks, black banners with red marks that burned like fire. Threx had brought everything. He wanted the city burned. He wanted the device back. Inside the command room, Rain stood before a map of the city. He looked at each street, each choke point. "We hold them here," he said, pointing. "We drag them into close quarters. We slow them down. And then," Vega asked, "and then what?" He looked at the glowing alien device. "Then we make a choice." The attack began at dawn. The sky turned black with smoke. Enemy artillery pounded the outer walls. Massive beasts charged the gates. Threx rode at the front, screaming orders filled with rage. Warborn forces met the enemy head-on. Their movements were perfect. No fear, no doubt. Holt led a squad through the north side. Vega controlled drone strikes from above. Saran and the Resistance fought at the center, side by side with Earth's finest soldiers. Every street became a battlefield, and still, the alien device pulsed. Ayla sat alone in the bunker, watching its countdown tick lower and lower. She touched her comm. "Commander Rain," she said, "we are almost out of time." "Is it a weapon?" he asked. "No," Ayla replied. "It's a door." Outside, the enemy was pushing hard. Warborn were being injured. The Resistance was running low on ammo. Threx's army was closing in. Then a sound like thunder filled the air. The alien device activated. A bright red light shot into the sky, breaking through clouds, sending a signal into space. For a moment, everything stopped. Even Threx paused on the battlefield. He stared up at the light. "No," he whispered. "They've called it." In the Warborn base, Rain looked up as the ground shook. "What did we just wake up?" he asked. Ayla replied, voice shaking. "Not what. Who?" And far above Valor, hidden among the stars, something answered the call. Something coming fast. Something not from Earth. Not from Threx. But from before. And it was already on its way. The sky above Valor was no longer dark. It burned red. The alien signal still glowed high in the air, like a scar across the clouds. The enemy army had stopped. Even Threx had paused. His war beasts growled nervously, sensing something strange in the wind. Commander Rain stood on the wall, looking up. "Ayla," he said through the comm, "what's coming?" Her voice crackled back, low and shaky. Not a ship. Not a message. Something alive. From deep space, a reply had come. And now, something was falling toward the planet. A shape. Huge, burning, silent, as came down through the red sky, heading straight for Valor. The ground shook. The enemy screamed. Then, silence. The object slammed into the earth just outside Dalvin's outer walls. Dust and fire rose into the air. Everyone, Warborn, Resistance, and enemy alike, stood still, waiting, watching. Rain narrowed his eyes. "Vega, scan it," she replied quickly. "It's a pod. Organic metal. Nothing like human or enemy tech." Saren, standing beside Holt on the front line, stared at the crater. Are we supposed to fight that? No, Holt said calmly. Not yet. The pod began to open. A strange hiss escaped from inside. The enemy took a step back. So did the resistance. But the Warborn stood their ground. Then, from inside the pod, a figure stepped out. It was tall, even taller than Holt, covered in armor, black and red with glowing marks running across its body. Its face was hidden behind a smooth mask. It didn't speak. It just looked around. And then, it looked at Rain. Everyone was silent. Rain stepped forward alone. You heard the signal. The figure nodded once. Who are you? Rain asked. The voice that replied was deep and old, filled with something ancient. I am the last. The last of what? Vega asked. The figure looked toward Threx's army. The last weapon from the war before memory. I was sealed away to stop the darkness. Now, you've woken me. Suddenly the ground split nearby. Something massive began crawling from beneath the soil. Not Threx's forces, more something worse. A giant creature, black and covered in metal armor, with glowing red eyes and long razor limbs. It screeched as it climbed out, shaking the ground with every step. Threx backed away, shouting to his soldiers, "Fall back! Fall back!" But it was too late. The creature rushed forward, smashing trees and walls, striking both humans and enemy alike. It didn't care who it killed. It was chaos. The last didn't move. Not at first. Then, with calm precision, it stepped forward and raised its hand. A red wave of energy blasted from its palm, slamming the creature backward with unbelievable force. The beast screamed, its armor cracking. The last turned to Rain. Now you understand. The enemy you fight is not the real threat. Rain looked at the battlefield. Then help us stop them. All of them. The last nodded once. Then, stand aside. And with that it launched into battle. The Warborn followed behind. Saran and the resistance fighters rejoined the fight, firing on Threx's confused soldiers. Vega called in drone strikes targeting weak points. Rain charged with his sword glowing, leading from the front. It was no longer just humans versus aliens. It was survival. The battlefield turned into chaos. The giant creature roared and threw, Warborn aside. But the last moved like a storm, cutting through it with weapons that seemed to form from its hands. Blades of light, shields of sound. Holt was thrown across the field but stood up again, bleeding but steady. "We hold the line!" he shouted. Rain reached the enemy's core forces, cutting through Threx's elite guards. "End this now, Threx," he yelled. Threx met him in battle, blade to blade. "You brought this on yourself, human." "No," Rain said. "You did. When you thought we would run." They clashed steel on steel, dust flying around them. The last finally brought down the great beast with a blast that cracked the earth. Its body burned, turning into ash. The battlefield fell quiet again. The enemy began to retreat. Threx shouted orders, but his army was broken, confused, and scared. Rain knocked Threx down, blade at his neck. "Call them off," he said coldly. Threx growled but nodded. A signal was sent. The enemy stopped fighting and backed away, for now. As the sun rose over the ruined city, people slowly came out from hiding. They saw the Warborn, bloody but standing. They saw the resistance fighters, alive. And they saw the last, a being from before their time, watching the sky. Vega walked up to Rain. "So, what now?" Rain looked up. Ayla's voice came over the comm. "That signal, Ray, it didn't just bring one." The last turned to Rain. "They know I've awakened. Others may follow. Some not like me." "Friend or foe?" Rain asked. The last didn't answer. Instead, it looked at the stars. "Prepare," it said, and the Warborn knew. This fight was far from over. The city of Dalvin was silent. Smoke rose from broken towers. Fires still burned in the distance. The people walked among ruins, tired, bruised, but alive. The Warborn had won the battle, but they had not won the war. Deep underground, Ayla sat alone in the bunker, staring at the alien device. Its countdown had stopped, but the screen showed a new message. "They are coming." She sent it to Commander Rain. He read it slowly. "How many?" Vega asked. Ayla's voice came back. "Too many." Rain stood on the city wall looking out at the wounded soldiers below, humans and Velar resistance. They had fought harder than anyone expected. But they were breaking, and the sky was changing again. Dark clouds moved in strange patterns. Lightning flashed in silence. From orbit, new shapes were falling, fast and glowing red. Saran pointed, up. "More pods?" Rain shook his head. "Not pods," Holt said it plainly. "Ships. Warships. Dozens of them. And they weren't Threxes. Even Threx saw them from his broken war camp far away." He stood in shock watching the sky. "This isn't our fight anymore," he whispered. One of his officers asked, "Do we run?" Threx closed his eyes. "There's nowhere left to run." Back in Dalvin, the last stood still, watching the ships fall. "They found me," he said. "I was their weapon once. Now they want me dead." Rain faced him. "Then help us again." The last turned his glowing eyes to Rain. "Even together, we may not win." Rain's voice was firm. "Maybe not. But we don't run." Suddenly, alarms screamed. The first enemy ships landed outside the city. They were shaped like blades, slicing into the earth. From them, tall beings in black armor stepped out. Their eyes glowed blue, cold, and empty. Machines followed, walking towers with cannons and shields. Ayla gasped. "This isn't just a war, it's an extermination." But the Warborn did not step back. Rain shouted, "Everyone to the walls. This is the last stand." The people of Valor, farmers, teachers, engineers, stood with the Warborn. Resistance fighters loaded old weapons. Children were hidden deep underground. Holt handed Saran a new rifle. "This one kicks harder," he said. Saran grinned nervously. "So do I." The sky cracked open as the enemy marched. And then, the Warborn charged. With the last leading them, they ran into battle. Rain struck, first cutting through machines with his blade. Holt smashed a tower mech with his bare hands. Vega dropped drones from above, explosions lighting the battlefield. The enemy was strong, too strong, but Earth had sent its strongest. The fight turned, brutal. Soldiers fell, machines exploded, blood mixed with fire. Then the last was hit, a glowing spear through his chest. He dropped to one knee. Rain ran to him. "Get up!" The last's voice was weak. "There is one chance." "What chance?" Rain asked. The last pointed to the alien device. "It can send one more signal, a call, but not to the stars. To Earth." "To Earth?" Rain's eyes widened. Ayla's voice came on the radio. "I can boost it. But if I do, the device will burn out." Rain looked around. His soldiers bleeding, civilians fighting. The enemy pushing hard, he gave the order. "Do it." In the bunker, Ayla activated the signal. A pulse shot from the city, through the clouds, into the sky. The ground shook. Then, silence. The enemy stopped, looking up, and from the sky came fire. A fleet of Earth warships dropped from orbit, their cannons lighting up the night. They came fast, loud, proud, and unstoppable, and with them, more Warborn, dozens, hundreds. Black-armored, warriors fell from orbit in drop pods smashing into the battlefield, rising with weapons glowing. Earth had answered. The real Warborn had arrived. The enemy hesitated. That was their mistake. Rain led the final charge. "For Earth!" he roared. Saran shouted, "For Velor!" The battlefield turned into a storm of steel, fire, and fury. Earth's ships blasted the sky. Warborn cut down machines. The enemy, the Ancient Ones, began to fall. Even Threx's army joined the fight. Not as friends, but as survivors. Threx himself struck down one of the enemy leaders with a burning blade. Together they pushed the enemy back. And when it was over, the battlefield was quiet. Bodies covered the land. Smoke rose. The Warborn stood tall. Valor was still standing. Barely, but standing. Later, as the sun rose, Rain walked through the ruins. Saren sat with Holt, laughing over shared bruises. Ayla stood with Vega, staring at the stars. The last lay still, broken, but smiling. Rain knelt beside him. "You saved us." The last whispered, "No. You saved yourselves." And then he was gone. Rain stood up. Around him the people of Velor cheered, not just for victory, but for hope. Because when the stars called for peacekeepers, Earth sent the Warborn, and the galaxy would never forget it.